Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So in this video rather, we're going to be taking a look at Tesla stock itself. I mean, honestly, the stock market is essentially a game at this point. We're going to be taking a look at Tesla, what it did today, what we can expect. Tomorrow is another very important, very big day that can determine quite a bit actually. So very important tomorrow, guys, so be ready for it. But nonetheless, let's go over what happened. If you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. Tesla ending the day up 2.39%, closing at $662.67. Also, quick announcement, I did get the better version of TradingView, so I have more options available, more indicators. I can show more things at the same time, which is great. So if you ever want to try TradingView yourself, by the way, I will have a link down below. You guys can check it out. It's a fantastic charting app. But nonetheless, jumping right into it. So Tesla, let's take a look at the 15-minute chart first. I want to show you guys something that's pretty important to understand that I noticed, honestly, a little too late. So first and foremost, Tesla did drop all the way down to 635. Again, my target was between 630 to 620. Anywhere in this range was my range. I would have bought more. Fortunately, it didn't drop that low. So it bounced just a tad above where my personal target was on the drop, which is fine. It is what it is. Nonetheless, a good bounce, essentially confirming this double bottom over here, more or less so far. Again, just one day, you don't want to get ahead of yourself. Decent looking candle, not the best, not the worst. Definitely more bullish than bearish, but it's trying to set up for a reversal. Let's just say that we are trying to set up for a reversal. I think tomorrow is important because tomorrow we have an FOMC the meeting where we're gonna get pretty much more information about the Fed, what their potential actions are going to be to fight inflation, all that stuff, and more importantly, the rate hike that they're going to be doing. At this point, 50 seems bearish. I mean, honestly, any rate hike seems bearish, but it's like, which one's the least bearish? And at the moment, people are saying that 75 basis points is what the Fed should be doing. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. Could be a very important, catalyst essentially for the market. So expect some low volume, probably some volatility an hour before the meeting itself, which is around, I think, 2 p.m. Eastern, and then probably a lot more as the meeting comes out and after it as well. So pretty much important day tomorrow. Nonetheless, nice bottom at the Tesla on Tesla here. I still wouldn't be surprised if we do revisit 625. Like, that still wouldn't shock me. I still think that's a possibility. So keep that in mind. Maybe even tomorrow, prior to the meeting or the notes getting released, could be a massive bear trap potentially, right? So keep that in mind. That's a possibility. So 625, in my opinion, is still very much in the cards to really get a true double bottom bounce. Though this is still pretty close. This is still acceptable, but like a true would be like 625 roughly. So keep that in mind, guys. That is still, in my opinion, an option. You can see we're still getting rejected by both of these red lines at the top over here, similar to how we had yesterday. Nonetheless, the candle is looking a little bit more bullish, though it is kind of trading within the range of yesterday's day, which usually signals a reversal in this case, which is good. That's not bad. That's fairly good in my opinion, but it also shows a little bit of uncertainty in my opinion as well. Another thing, on the 15-minute chart, you can see we are forming a very small inverted head and shoulders, similar to what we were forming that I was talking about on the larger time frame over here that unfortunately broke apart. Now we're forming a slightly smaller version of that over here, with the neckline being somewhere around this kind of 680-ish range, this being the bottom. So in other words, if we roughly, break through that, give or take, from here, we could potentially get a rally up to, somewhere around the 720s, give or take. Actually, sorry, a little bit higher than that. Somewhere around the 720s at least, assuming we break above 680. So if we break above 680, guys, expect a rally somewhere to around the, mid to low 700s, definitely in the cards in my opinion. So that's a decent sign all in all, which is great. Now moving over, staying in the 15-minute, one way you could have played this if you were day trading, and in case you didn't notice, which I noticed a little bit late, I will admit, but nonetheless, this is where the RSI divergences come into play. This is a bullish divergence. You can see as the stock made a low here and they made a low here, the RSI made a low here but made a higher low here. That right there is a bullish divergence, and which is great. And you can see as it's making a low over here, which is similar to here, we're substantially higher. So overall, the RSI is suggesting that there is a potential reversal coming up. So I personally think we will get a reversal. We will get some kind of bear rally coming up here relatively soon. But again, as anything in this market especially, it can of course all fall apart. So the main thing I would pay attention to in terms of this falling apart is essentially if we break under like 640 essentially. If we break under 640 to 645, that's a very key level. If that does not hold and we go under that level, there's a chance that this falls apart. So keep that in mind, guys. Extremely important. That's not something you want to see fall apart. Another thing you can pay attention to, that is of course on the larger time frame over here, is going to be the double bottom that I did talk about. But on the larger time frame, you can see how it can look, right? So you have where is it? So you can have this kind of move downwards, move up, down again, double bottom, and then up. This is a very bullish pattern. It's an extremely bullish pattern. It's a very common pattern as well. So that's something to look forward to. But again, in order for that to not essentially break apart, 620 essentially has to hold. If we ever fall below 620 to 625, if that ever breaks, that pattern is essentially falling apart most likely, unless we recoup it extremely quickly. And it only falls below that for like very, very, very briefly, like literally like 10 minutes or something like that. So that's another thing to really pay attention to. So other things, of course, the usual, we have the EMA, the 21 EMA. Until we break above this, I wouldn't call a true reversal in the cards yet. So as long as we're below this, I don't think a reversal is, you know, like an overall reversal, like a long-term, like on the daily type reversal, is even worth talking about, right? Until at the very least something like that is broken and we stay above it. So like this candle, like I said before, but not just collapsing underneath that the next day. Again, my 3-day rule, maintain above it for about 3 days is what I want to see, because it shows the strength. It shows strength. It shows that that's now considered support, which is great. So what you want to see. Then, of course, we have the Bollinger Band here. We, of course, are bouncing off the red line and slowly making our way over to the white line, which I wouldn't be surprised if we revisit it. You know, it'll probably be somewhere around that kind of, you know, low 700s that I talked about, maybe around 720, where we can dance around. It's kind of like what we did over here. Kind of, you know, gravitate towards it essentially as it usually does, where we kind of dance around it before we're determining potentially the next direction, whether it's back down under or actually staying above it. So that's something else to keep in mind. So again, I wouldn't be surprised to revisit that at some point, potentially soon, based on how the patterns and the divergences are actually looking, which is great. As you can see here, for instance, right, when the RSI on the daily touched this kind of 30 level back when we were somewhere around this kind of 680 level, it was 30. Then we dropped all the way down to essentially the same, or sorry, the RSI dropped down to the same level. However, the overall chart itself was still sitting, or we dropped all the way down to 620. So made a substantially lower low, though the RSI essentially stood more or less very similar spot. And now that we're dropped back down over here, you can see we're still sitting around this kind of, you know, 650 area, but the RSI is sitting now at 836 as opposed to here where it was at a 30, but we were sitting at a 680. So essentially the RSI is slowly starting to make a bullish divergence. This doesn't mean that the reversal is going to happen tomorrow necessarily, but it could. But it's, to me, signaling that, you know, it is on the horizon, assuming nothing horrendous falls apart. Like, for instance, tomorrow's day being the FOMC day, where all it takes is some really horrendous news from the Fed, from Jerome Powell, to just essentially take all these patterns, take all these, you know, lines, if you will, and just throw them into the gutter. That's, you know, sometimes major catalysts like that can affect it in that kind of way, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens with that, of course. The next thing, of course, to look at, guys, is going to be the 5-day moving average. Of course, still well below that. That's sitting at a solid 690 roughly. So until that's broken, I still wouldn't call a short-term reversal in the cards just yet. Similar to the 10-day moving average, even higher, somewhere around the 711, which is usually, now I notice the 10-day moving average seems to be following the Bollinger Band fairly well, you know, fairly close to each other. So until that's broken as well, I wouldn't, you know, talk about anything too major. And the last thing I want to talk or take a look at that's really sick that I can now show you guys as well, because I have the premium package with TradingView, is of course going to be the volume weighted average. Is that what it's called? I always forget the name of it. I don't know why I always forget the name of this thing. Where is it? Do I not have it? Anyways, essentially this shows you the volume that is, I forgot the name, the technical name, like it's just escaping me right now, but pretty much what this shows is the volume being traded at each level. So this is the volume traded per day. This is the volume traded per level, right? Which is interesting. So you can see essentially, you know, this level right here, that's kind of like 680-ish level right here, 666, 680, somewhere, you know, this general range right here where I have this line-ish. You can see there is definitely decent resistance, because there's a lot of volume in this range. But once we break above that and, you know, get well above that, you know, assuming we maintain it, the move, kind of like this candle here, can be really nice and fast, all the way up to potentially somewhere at the very least like 690 to 700, potentially even all the way up to like 710, where the volume starts getting thicker. So you can think of these as resistance and supports. The longer the line over here going, of course, to the left, in this case, since we're going towards it from the bottom up, think of it as a resistance, and vice versa. When we're above it going down, think of it as support. Very, very cool stuff, which is why we're getting some support around this level. You can see there is a nice volume over here. So keep that in mind, guys. That's, you know, of course, extremely important to pay attention to. But on the bad side is, again, like I said, if we ever drop below this kind of 620 level, and especially 600, that's bad, because you can see the volume just essentially, it's non-existent, right? The volume is essentially non-existent, which is why I said if we ever drop below 600, the volume just dissipates, and we're probably going to be falling pretty fast in this level here, most likely to, again, this kind of mid 500 range. I have 550, between 550 to 560. We're going to collapse there pretty quickly, and if that breaks, then we're going to collapse all the way down to this 450, which is my ultimate potential targets, extremely quickly as well, because the volume is essentially non-existent because we escaped this area so fast before, and we never really traded too much in this range before as well, this whole gap right here. So that could be pretty spicy, so keep that in mind, guys. But nonetheless, I'm liking the way it's looking. Again, I think tomorrow, once again, as usual, it seems like every day is a big day, but tomorrow is actually a pretty important day, so I think tomorrow can give us a big indication as to where we can potentially head. Moving along to the other things that I like to look at, which gives us a better general idea. Like I said, the VIX did bounce downwards, down about 4% overall today, which isn't too bad, but I still think there's a decent chance that, assuming the market does rally, which I think it will, with the VIX will come down probably to around this kind of 28-ish level, probably bounce off of that, and I think that's where the market is going to start really taking a shitter. So keep that in mind. That's pretty important. As well, taking a look at the SPY, of course, we're still kind of trading within this overall range that I talked about. Got a little bit spicy over here, I'm not gonna lie, got really scary, but nonetheless, nice little buying pressure to close out the day. Still just barely closing within this overall trend line that we're in, this kind of descending wedge, if you will. Just barely though, so that's definitely hanging by a thread there, so it's pretty scary stuff. And then QQQ is very similar as well, kind of went a bit lower, bounced essentially directly more or less off of this wedge, and now sitting in essentially a similar position to the SPY. But yeah, that's about it for this video, guys. There you have it. I personally think that there is a potential bear rally setting up here. Just really depends on what happens tomorrow, so we'll see if tomorrow confirms it or not. But I gave you the levels to look out for, so hopefully that's something you pay attention to. But other than that, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.